Hello, it's June 2022, and before I get into this video is not to state or imply what others should say, think, or do. It's not offering any solutions or even highlighting a problem. I'm simply going to try to provide some information for educational purposes only. Now, I've talked about how, for example, every level of government has become a corporation. And I've also stated how corporations are actually dictatorships. And corporations have their own, with air quotes, laws. And these laws can be imposed on, for example, their employees or even people using their goods and services. Now, I just want to segue for a brief moment here. And a lot of people don't know that a corporation has the status of a living human being in law. And the very laws that were used to create this scenario were the laws that were used to free slaves. Now, the whole slavery thing, that's a whole different topic, which I've touched up on in recent videos. And that's not what this is about. So corporations, government go hand in hand. Now, I've said that government was only ever to have established and maintain infrastructures. Corporations was the link for the common person, the civilian, to be able to contract with a governing body to be able to, for example, create an infrastructure, for example, like a road or a bridge. And the lifespan of a corporation was to be very limited. And if the job required more time, then that would be extended till the job was done. And then, as I said, somewhere along the way, that's something to look into. Corporations has the status of a living human being, and that's a whole different topic in itself about corporations and how they're structured and so forth. But what I want to focus on is corporations having their own police. Now, everyone's familiar with security, like security guards, say you would see in a mall. That is different to having police or a private security detail. Now, when a corporation has their own actual police who carry guns, make arrests, they have handcuffs, and they enforce not only the laws that surround them in their jurisdiction, but they also enforce the laws of, for example, the corporation that they're working for. Now, I've said before that even with public police, the ones that you see, for example, in a city, they compete, a corporation will compete for that contract through an RFP. And usually there's only one corporation bidding against it because there's only one corporation that is equipped and have established themselves to compete against that. So the whole idea of an RFP going out, it's an RFP, request for purchase, a contract, and the contract lasts so many years. And we hear, for example, police and even, for example, teachers having to renew contracts because they're private entities, they're corporations. When we see, for example, police who are contracted by a city, in this example, they're getting paid by that city to enforce laws, rules, regulations, statutes, etc. And the same applies with private police. And private police not only carry weapons and can do arrests and stuff, but they also have their own tactical teams. They go to judges for warrants, everything else. And a lot of people think that private police are just security guards, and you know, maybe a glorified security guard because they can have a gun and make arrests and stuff like that. But even security guards have more power than people think. Now, I'm just going to segue off on a tangent. When you look at, for example, people who work for the environment, they have their own policing, and they actually have more power than within that jurisdiction. Like, say, for example, in Canada, provincial park, or in the United States, a state park, they have more power than the local police do to make arrests and do whatever. However, they do work in tandem with regular law enforcement and ask their assistance. Now, there's some limitations to how far they can go, but like a conservation officer, but they do have the authority, and people think, you know, they may even mock them, thinking, well, whatever, but people get surprised when they, for example, commit an act against the law, or say, for example, park regulations. These people do have power. When you look at, for example, fish and wildlife, these people who are enforcing those laws, they can impound your vehicle, they can do all sorts of stuff. And to be out, say, especially remote, and have that happen, makes for a very bad day. So I guess really my point is, you want to respect these people, and these people are simply not just looking after the environment, but they're looking after people, because a lot of people, and I've said this before, most people, as a descriptive, are stupid. And when they go into the wilderness, they don't know, for example, that they have to watch out for wildlife like bears, and they don't have respect by leaving their trash, for example, around. So these people play a big role in a lot of different things, but they do have authority. Now, going back to policing and corporations can and do have their own private police. Now I want to use the example, railways. They have their own police force, and within, I can't recall, I think, say it's a kilometer outside of that jurisdiction, they have authority. So I'm going to just give you a loose example here. Say, for example, you're driving past a CN rail yard, and they have posted speed limits. So say it's 40 kilometers an hour. Well, if you're speeding through there, those officers can pull you over and give you a ticket. And they will be carrying a gun and everything else, and you have to, give them your particulars, like your driver's license, your registration, and your insurance. And if you don't, it's just like dealing with, for example, a city police officer. Now, there's some gray areas. I'm not going to get into the details, but there's some sort of gray areas of crime was committed here, and it's active, and it goes outside the jurisdiction. But usually what ends up happening is they will call the, for example, city police, and, catch the person, or, do whatever needs to be done. But this is an example of a private corporation that has their own police that, for all intents and purposes, are just like your common run-of-the-mill police officer in a city or a province or a state. They have all the same powers and everything else, and their own tactical teams and detectives and everything. A private corporation, this is an example, and I'm really stressing this for a reason. And this is not anything to do with police. I'm just simply stating my focus here is corporations. Now, I said every level of government, whether it be municipal to the provincial, state level to the federal level, have their own police, and every level of government is a corporation. Okay? But there's other corporations out there who have their own police. And the types of people that they hire will either be active police or retired police officers, former police officers, and even military or former military personnel. And that's best known as mercenaries. But I'm not implying that these police, private police, are mercenaries. I'm just simply stating, when you have, for example, ex-military working for a private corporation, mercenaries. And this is the world that we all live in. Now, if this rubs people wrong, and people are now getting irate listening to this, saying, well, this is out of hand, there's nothing you can do about it. And I'm just going to segue for a moment. I've talked about, for example, real quick, how the laws of the land and everything else, and you have these free men on the land movements, and even probably freedom fighters and some truthers out there who are wanting to break away from the current, as a descriptive, legal structure, and they're either doing it, they're bastardizing everything, mixing some truths and fictions, or just simply trying to walk away from it all. You're not going to fix it, and you're not going to run from it. And I'm not trying to sound pessimistic or sound like a defeatist. It's a reality. And I've highlighted those who have the monopoly on violence and who also display vulgar acts of violence. Ultimately, everything boils down to violence, fear. And we have the population in fear about everything. Even things, imaginary things that they can't see, whatever. People are just scared. And they can't even resolve their own disputes amongst themselves over, for example, a parking spot. But I digress. But I just really wanted to highlight private policing, and we see not only with corporations, but we're seeing this now, say for example in North America, with private policing that are not even a corporation. It could be a belief system, for example. And I'm not saying anything negative about any belief system, I'm just simply highlighting something here. So private policing is becoming, or has actually, it's been around for forever, even to ancient times. But we're starting to see a real rise in this, and people don't understand what's really going on. And a lot of people don't even realize, for example, there are private police working for corporations and belief systems and so forth. Now, just before I finish off here, now I wonder what other corporations would have their own policing, and perhaps maybe even some sort of sovereignty. Just things to think about. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people say, when is it going to get easier? When you die.